Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is R.S. Raghu, and with me is Purnima Samant Kadakoti, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with a message of caution to stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. The headlines. India and Pakistan agree to abide by all agreements and cease firing along LOC and all other sectors. New Delhi issues guidelines and digital media ethics code for OTT, online streaming and social media platforms. Australian Parliament passes news media and digital platforms mandatory bargaining code. UK court orders extradition of fugitive diamond merchant Nirav Modi to India in PNB scam case. FATF retains Pakistan in the grey list for terror financing. Moody's revises India's growth projection for the next financial year from 10.8% to 13.7%. And in cricket, India crushed England by 10 wickets in third cricket test in Ahmedabad. Wrap up pink ball test within 2 days to take 2-1 lead in 4-match series. India and Pakistan on Thursday reviewed the situation along the line of control and all other sectors in a free, frank and cordial atmosphere. The Defence Ministry said the Director Generals of Military Operations of both the countries held discussions over the established mechanism of hotline contact. In the interest of achieving mutually beneficial and sustainable peace along the borders, the two sides agreed to address each other's core issues and concerns which have propensity to disturb peace and lead to violence. India and Pakistan have also agreed for strict observance of all agreements, understandings and ceasefiring along the line of control and all other sectors. Replying to a query on India-Pak DGMO level talks on ceasefire, MEA spokesperson Anurag Srivastava said India desires normal neighbourly relations with Pakistan and its position remains unchanged on key issues.
India desires normal neighbourly relations with Pakistan. We have always maintained that we are committed to addressing issues, if any, in a peaceful and bilateral manner. On key issues, our position remains unchanged.
On the issue of India-China disengagement in Ladakh, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Anurag Srivastava said India has not conceded any territory as a result of disengagement agreement with China. He added that New Delhi has enforced observance and respect for LAC and has prevented any unilateral change in status quo. The spokesperson urged that the mutual redeployment as a result of this agreement should not be misrepresented.
The 10th round of the senior commanders meeting was held on the 20th of February this year. Joint press release issued after this latest round of the senior commanders meeting, wherein it has been stated that there was a candid and in-depth exchange of views on the remaining issues along the LAC in the western sector, and both sides view the smooth and successful completion of disengagement in the north and south bank as a significant first step, as this forms a basis for resolution of remaining issues so as to achieve the eventual goal of complete disengagement in all friction areas. The two sides have agreed to work towards a mutually acceptable resolution of the remaining issues.
Earlier this afternoon, External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. In a tweet, Dr. Jaishankar said they discussed the implementation of Moscow Agreement and reviewed the status of disengagement.
India has requested Canadian authorities to take steps to ensure the safety of Indian nationals who are reportedly being threatened and intimidated. Replying to media query this evening, External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Anurag Srivastava said these threats have come from some fringe elements in Canada and this has been taken up with Canadian authorities both in Ottawa and Delhi.
These threats have come from certain fringe elements in Canada, and we've taken this up with the Canadian authorities both in Ottawa and in Delhi. We've requested them to take steps to ensure the safety of Indian citizens in Canada. We advise Indian nationals to report any such incidents to the local Canadian police and also bring it to the immediate attention of our High Commission in Ottawa as well as to our consulates there. I would also say that we've taken up with the Canadian authorities the issues concerning the security and safety of our missions and consulates and our diplomatic personnel in Canada.
The Government of India on Thursday issued guidelines and digital media ethics code for over-the-top OTT, online streaming and social media platforms. As per the guidelines, social media platforms have to remove content involving nudity and morphed pictures of women within 24 hours. A grievance redressal mechanism for receiving and resolving complaints from the users or victims will be put at place. Releasing the guidelines for intermediaries and digital media ethics code rules 2021 in New Delhi, Communication and IT Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad said the social media intermediaries will have to appoint a Chief Compliance Officer who will be responsible for ensuring compliance with the Act and rules.
You'll have to have a Chief Compliance Officer resident in India, responsible for ensuring compliance of the Acts and the rules. Second, a nodal contact person resident in India for having 24/7 coordination with the law enforcement agencies. तो पहला हो गया चीफ कंप्लायंस ऑफिसर, दूसरा हो गया नोडल कंटैक्ट पर्सन, तीसरा है अपॉइंट ए रेजिडेंट ग्रीवांस ऑफिसर हु शैल परफॉर्म द ग्रीवांस रिड्रेसल मैकेनिज्म एज आई इंडिकेटेड.
The social media platform will publish a monthly compliance report mentioning the details of complaints received and action taken on the complaints as well as details of contents removed. The minister said the social media platforms are welcome to do business in India, but they need to follow the constitution and laws of India. The government also unveiled digital media ethics codes relating to digital media and OTT platforms to regulate digital content. The OTT platforms will self-classify the content into 5 age-based categories and prominently display the classification rating specific to each content or program together with a content descriptor informing the user about the nature of the content. The publishers of news on digital media will be required to observe norms of journalistic conduct of the Press Council of India and the program code under the Cable Television Networks Regulation. Information and Broadcasting Minister Prakash Javadekar said a 3-level grievance redressal mechanism has been established under the rules with different levels of self-regulation.
In today's Hotspot segment, we bring you a discussion on the guidelines on social media and OTT platforms with cyber expert Jitendra Kumar Jain.
The government today released a very important set of new guidelines that will regulate several social media platforms, digital news platforms, as well as the over-the-top platforms like Netflix and Prime Amazon, etc. And this was a much awaited set of guidelines, Mr. Jain, as we all know that Information Technology and Electronics Minister, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, had in the first part of the budget session apprised the Parliament that one such set of guidelines is about to come. And the need was felt for a long time because there was a sense within the social media community and also among the consumers that there is an absence of grievance redressal mechanism. So the new guidelines now put into place a number of measures whereby the social media platforms and intermediaries will have to actually respond to consumer complaints and also complaints from the government with respect to unlawful content. What do you have to say on the broad framework of these guidelines?
I think what government has done, they have tried to find a very fine balance between self-regulation, oversight, and sort of ensuring that how these big giants, especially that these big techs, are bought into some sort of governance control and to ensure that they comply with the law of the land. So if you look, what government has done is that they have now differentiated in the new draft IT rules between the social media intermediaries and the significant social media intermediaries. So what they have said is that a social media platform which has got more than 50 lakh customers in India or users in India would be labeled as a significant intermediary, and they would have to do some additional compliances. For example, they would then have to now appoint 3 officers, the compliance officer, grievance officer, and a nodal officer in India, which should be available 24/7 given and he has to be a resident of India. He can be a foreign person, but he has to live within India. This is to do away with the problem that these platforms were not complying with Indian law. Most of the grievance officers were sitting in some countries like Ireland. They would not respond for several days. So to do away with this problem of timely compliance and non-compliance, government has ensured that these significant social media intermediaries would now have to have these three people based out of India. At the same time, to ensure that there is no stifling of innovation or there is no extra regulation or problems created for small startups or innovators who are just trying to build new businesses. So the people who have got platforms which have got less than 50 lakh users, they can continue to do the business in the normal fashion. All the restrictions and the sort of additional compliances are coming for the new platforms. Second, the government has said that if there is any content which is brought in the notice of these platforms by a court order or a government order or through any lawful order, that content would have to be blocked, restricted or taken down within 36 hours. If any user approaches this grievance officer, especially in the cases of revenge porn or obscene content or blackmailing content and stuff, these officers will have to respond to those complaints within 24 hours. So I think this is a very fine way of empowering users. Government is also saying that if these social media platforms, sometimes they're acting on their own free wills and fancies, they suspend account of users, they take down content, they restrict their post, they do some sort of shadow bans. If there is any moderation or blocking or restriction of any user's content or his account, these platforms will now have to inform that user. They will have to give him an opportunity to appeal that order. And if that user is not satisfied within a month of the resolution with the social media platforms, he can always approach the government.
I had to ask you about a very important part of the social media regulation guidelines released today, where the government is saying that intermediaries providing services primarily in the nature of messaging, for instance, WhatsApp, also Facebook, would have to enable the identification of the first originator of information on its computer resource. Mr. Jain, I'll take you back to 2 years when you remember there was a kind of an epidemic on WhatsApp of fake messages, after which a lot of lynching happened across the country and a lot of law enforcement challenges had arisen. Even at that time, this debate had been initiated that WhatsApp should disclose the source of the information from where is the unlawful content being originated. But WhatsApp, contrarily, had taken a position that they protect the privacy of users, and since all conversations are end-to-end encrypted, they would not share with the government as to where did the unlawful content actually take birth or originate. So how will the government comply with this? I mean, how will the legal guarantees be put into place to ensure that WhatsApp complies?
In last 3-4 years, we have seen the growing nature of political conversations over social media, growing politicization of social media, where 70% of conversations today are on political topics, which has led to extreme views, sometimes degrading political discourse, fake news, rumor mongering. And what we saw a couple of years back in Bangalore, that due to rumors or spreading on WhatsApp and social media, several people were lynched to death. Now, there is another thing what we have seen in last couple of years is that foreign powers are running propaganda campaigns within India using information warfare by running several fake news websites, posting rumors about our policies to incite violence within India. Now, what government is trying to do, they are bringing in sort of a guideline or a rule within this notified draft today, whereas they are saying that if any fake news, rumor or something unlawful content is found on these platforms, government by or a court order or by a lawful order can ask these platforms, including WhatsApp, to disclose the identity of the first originator or the uploader of that content. Now, which is fine in the case of social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube or any other Twitter, but there has been, I think, a confusion in this conversation when it comes to WhatsApp and other platforms which are end-to-end encrypted, which are instant messaging platforms. I think there are some people who are trying to spread rumors that government is now asking these companies to provide a backdoor or their chat history and stuff. I think the laws make it very clear that government is not looking for their chats or personal conversations. All government is looking is for metadata and the identity of the first user who uploaded a particular URL or a link or a video, which WhatsApp can easily trace. For example, when you forward a message several times, these days you see that this message has been forwarded so many times and all those things. So WhatsApp does keep a track of metadata. WhatsApp does know the identity of the first uploader of that content. I think government is looking for that very little metadata to establish the identity of the propagators and originators of those content.
I think what you said is also something which the IT minister made very clear today when he was announcing the new guidelines, when he actually stressed that the social media intermediaries would have to reveal details of the first originator of the mischievous post, and no other important details or nothing else related to any kind of chat history. As you said, only metadata is required. But again, the issue comes back to whether WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter would comply, because we have undergone a lot of problems on account of this kind of fake news being peddled through WhatsApp and through Facebook. And we saw recently, last week, I'm sure you're aware, how Facebook managed to actually strike a deal with the Australian government when the Australian government was planning a law asking Facebook and Google to pay up for hosting news links on their platform. So it's not easy to get them to comply. What I want to understand is what kind of a legal guarantee will the system have to make WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter comply with our orders?
I think there is this growing discourse and phenomena across the world where, take the case of Australian government's dispute with Facebook, where Facebook and Google are refusing to pay to the Australian news media outlets. They are refusing to comply with the Australian law. Or you take the example of Twitter refusing to comply with the lawful orders of Indian government last month to take down certain fake accounts posting violent content. Or then issues of Twitter trying to be banned in some African countries on the charge of influencing elections. So I think there is a growing concern and phenomena where these big techs like Facebook, Twitter and Google are refusing to comply with the local laws. Now, it is in that context, even today, Minister made it very clear during the press conference that, look, WhatsApp has almost 50 crore users in India. And I think if you look at the whole spectrum of the social media networks, I think almost around 40% users come from India. They make huge money from India. Now, there cannot be a case that these platforms can think that our laws, our sovereign parliaments are subservient to their business policies, which is why Minister was saying that they're welcome to do business in India, they're welcome to have users, they're welcome to make money, but they cannot refuse to not comply with the law. They cannot spread anarchy in the name of defending free speech. They cannot have dual standards. When a US capital is attacked by mobs and angry protesters, you suspend thousands and thousands of accounts. Whereas in India, where there are violent protests on the streets of Delhi, when the red for the symbol of Indian democracy is attacked and the national flag is insulted, these platforms have taken a different view and they are not suspending accounts despite of lawful government orders, refusing to comply with Indian law, and then sort of saying that we are trying to defend free speech, and whereas what they're actually doing is trying to spread anarchy. So I think the very purpose of this draft intermediary guidelines is to ensure that there is now a legal backing to ensure that these companies comply with the law and they appoint officers in Indian territories, are resident officers. Government of India can take action against in case they refuse to apply with law. Now, if they don't comply, I think they are welcome to leave India. There is no legal bar for them to operate within India. If they don't comply with the law, if they don't find Indian parliament or Indian laws or Indian environment is not good for them, they are free to leave. Nobody is stopping them.
Right. That's a very important point you made. There again has been a lot of public debate on the nature of content being shown on a lot of OTT platforms. So how does this three-tier system of regulation for OTT platforms work? Because the government today said that there will be a grievance redressal mechanism even in respect of these platforms.
Whatever compliances electronic channel has to do under the Cable TV Act or a print publication has to do under the Press Council of India Act, the similar things have to be then now adhered to and complied by in spirit by these OTT platforms for video content or these news websites for stuff they're publishing in the name of news. Now OTT, they are saying that, look, you can self-regulate. There is a code of ethics which government has now put in place that what should be done and what should not be done. They have to comply with that code of ethics in a self-regulating manner. At second level of regulation, they can form a federation or a group of self-regulating mechanism, like the TV channels have a news broadcast authority. So they can create an independent agency which can be headed by a retired Supreme Court or a High Court judge or independent person who can then oversee the self-regulation. And this is sort of an industry body and players can form it among themselves. Government will have no interference. At the top, government is saying that finally we will have an oversight mechanism to look at these first two levels of self-regulation. Suppose if OTT platform or any OTT platform refuse to comply or serve with the code of ethics, then probably somebody can go to this self-regulating body of industry, file a complaint there if they are not satisfied, if that mechanism is also failing for some reason, or if there is an emergency where content has to be taken off immediately. Then this oversight mechanism headed by the Secretary of Information and Broadcasting can issue directions. Whatever powers government had under the Section 69A of IT Act to block certain content in India which can threaten our sovereignty, integrity and public order, which was done in the case when government asked Twitter to take down certain accounts recently. So what government has done, they have sort of divested the powers related to video content or this OTT platforms, etc., to the Ministry of Information Broadcasting. So they have sort of said that look, for IT related issues and technical issues and stuff, Ministry of IT will deal. For content related to news or OTT platforms, Ministry of Information Broadcasting and the Secretary Information Broadcasting will be the designated officer. And then they will follow the same process of law to ensure that these platforms comply. Second, very important to know that this is not a censorship. These OTT platforms do not have to take any certification from an external agency. All government is saying is that you start classifying content, what is suitable for 12-year-old, what is suitable for 18-year-old, what is suitable for 16-year-old, and ensure that a 12-year-old does not end up watching porn or nudity or extreme violence, which is fine in my case, I believe. Second, government is also saying that all these digital news platforms which have suddenly popped up in last 3 years in thousands and thousands of numbers, now still government is saying that you don't have to seek any license or register with the government. What you have to do is that you have to sort of appoint an authorized representative of your platform or a portal and give his details to the government so that government knows who's running the portal and who can government communicate or deal with in case of any emergency. So that is the only slight amount of regulation government has brought in.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Jain.
Thank you.
In another development, the Australian Parliament on Thursday passed News, Media and Digital Platforms Mandatory Bargaining Code. As per the new code, the digital platforms like Facebook and Google will require to pay local media outlets and publishers to link their content on news feeds or in search results.
Meanwhile, Facebook Incorporation has informed that it will invest at least $1 billion in the news industry over the next 3 years. The announcement comes days after a high-profile standoff with the Australian government over paying news outlets for content. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at @AIR News Alerts.
A UK court Thursday ruled that fugitive diamond heir Nirav Modi could be extradited to India to stand trial. The court said that a prima facie case has been established against him and that he has a case to answer for in India. Nirav Modi is wanted in India in the Punjab National Bank scam case. Judge Samuel Goose said that a prima facie case of fraud and money laundering is established. The judge also stated that Nirav Modi has conspired to destroy evidence and has a case to answer for in India. The order will be sent back to UK Home Secretary Preeti Patel for a sign-off. The judge added that Nirav Modi has the right to appeal the order. In a setback for Pakistan Financial Action Task Force, FATF has decided to retain Pakistan in the grey list for terror financing. The FATF is an intergovernmental body set up in 1989 to combat money laundering, terror financing and other related threats to the international financial system. Currently, it has 39 members. Pakistan has been on the grey list since June 2018. Now, it will be very difficult for Pakistan to get financial aid from International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the European Union, making its financial condition more precarious.
India and Uzbekistan on Thursday agreed to strengthen multilateral cooperation. Foreign Minister of Uzbekistan, Abdulaziz Kamilov, who is on a 2-day visit to India, met with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar in New Delhi on Thursday. The discussion provided an opportunity to discuss various bilateral, regional and global issues of mutual interest. The ministers positively assessed the progress on the outcomes of the India-Uzbekistan virtual summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President of Uzbekistan Shavkat Mirziyoyev held on 11th December last year. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
ग्लोबल टॉय इंडस्ट्री 7 लाख करोड़ रुपए से भी अधिक की है. Team up for toys.
The Government of India is organizing India's first ever, the India Toy Fair. Indian local toy manufacturers march forward for Atmanirbhar Bharat. It's time to get vocal for your remarkable local. From 27th February to 2nd March, must come forward to get registered online at www.theindiatoyfair.in.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the India's first toy fair on Saturday via video conferencing. Toy Fair 2021 will be held from 27th of February to 2nd of March. It aims to bring together all stakeholders, including buyers, sellers, students, teachers and designers on a virtual platform to create sustainable linkages and encourage dialogue for the overall development of the industry.
Global rating agency Moody's on Thursday upped India's growth projection for the financial year 2021-22 to 13.7% from 10.8% estimated earlier. In its Global Macro Outlook 2021-22, Moody's said India's economy has rebounded quickly from one of the world's longest and most stringent lockdowns, which also came with the steepest fall in GDP in the second quarter of 2020. The revised numbers came on the back of normalization of activity and growing confidence in the market with the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines.
Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, will reach New Delhi today on a 2-day visit to India. Mr. Al Nahyan will meet External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar tomorrow at Hyderabad House in New Delhi. The new passenger train service between India and Bangladesh will start from 26th of March, the day the neighbouring country begins the Golden Jubilee celebrations of its independence. The Indian Railway has informed that the train will leave New Jalpaiguri, NJP, on every Thursday and Monday, while it will depart from Dhaka on Friday and Thursday. The Haldibari-Chilahati in Bangladesh train route was opened after a gap of 55 years for goods trains on 17th of December last year. The passenger train between New Jalpaiguri and Dhaka will take the same route.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press.
Wall Street Journal reports that President Biden revoked parts of Trump immigration restrictions. The Guardian writes that Armenian Prime Minister has accused the military of an attempted coup. The Sydney Morning Herald reports that trade dispute flares again as Australian wine blocked at Chinese ports. It also reports the security concerns raised over state-linked company processing visas in China. Khalij Times has reported about the Indian-made AstraZeneca COVID vaccine delivery to Ghana. Abhishek Mukhopadhyay for AIR World News.
US President Joe Biden has signed an executive order aimed at addressing the global semiconductor chip shortage. Following a meeting with bipartisan group of lawmakers about supply chain issues, Biden said he will push for funding for semiconductor legislation. The shortfall of semiconductors has forced US automakers and other manufacturers to cut production. The semiconductor industry has been urging the US administration and Congress to fund semiconductor incentives included in last year's National Defense Authorization Act.
Moving on to sports, in cricket, India crushed England by 10 wickets on day 2 in the third test at Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad. India is now leading the 4-match test series 2-1. The International Olympic Committee (IOC) Vice President John Coates said on Thursday that athletes are being encouraged to get vaccinated against COVID-19 ahead of the Tokyo Olympics, but it will not be compulsory. In another development, IOC President Thomas Bach has said that weightlifting could be removed from the Olympic program by 2024 if the International Weightlifting Federation (IWF) fails to implement reforms in the fight against doping. The IWF has been hit by doping scandals and accusations of corruption in recent years.
A quick look at the headlines once again. India and Pakistan agree to abide by all agreements and cease firing along LOC and all other sectors. New Delhi issues guidelines and digital media ethics code for OTT, online streaming and social media platforms. Australian Parliament passes news media and digital platforms mandatory bargaining code. UK court orders extradition of fugitive diamond merchant Nirav Modi to India in PNB scam case. FATF retains Pakistan in the grey list for terror financing. Moody's revises India's growth projection for the next financial year from 10.8% to 13.7%. And in cricket, India crushed England by 10 wickets in third cricket test in Ahmedabad. Wrap up pink ball test within 2 days to take 2-1 lead in 4-match series. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Uzbekistan.
वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीर पराई जाने रे हर दुखे उपकार करे तोहे मन अभिमान ना आने रे वैष्णव जन तो तेने कहिए जे पीड़ पराई जाने रे सकल.
And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.